Hello children and welcome to the online teaching session. Children, in the previous video, we have seen the chapter number 1, that is general method of reproduction. Now, in today's class, we'll start with the chapter number 2, sexual reproduction in flowering plant. Now, if I am using a word sexual reproduction in plants, it means I am talking about a flower. Okay? Flower is an organ that is responsible for sexual reproduction in plants. If flower word is used, it means basically I am talking about angiospermic plants, because all the other lower plants we have already discussed in chapter number 1. So, we'll discuss now chapter number 2, that is reproduction in angiospermic plant, that is flower. Now, before we begin the chapter, let us just have a look on the structure of the flower. Now, the structure on which the flower is situated is called as thalamus. Okay? Or it is also called as receptacle. At the center of the structure, there is innermost roll of the flower, and this innermost roll is called as ovary. Okay. Now, this ovary is having a structure called as stigma. Now, the stigma can be of lobed shape or it can be flat. Then, there is a long structure called as style. Now, in the various flower, the length of the style may vary. Then we come to the base, and this is called as the ovary. Now, this ovary consists of the ovule that helps in the process of fertilization and formation of seed and fruit. Now, this all together is known as pistil. Now, if one is there, we call it as a pistil, and if we are talking about the group, then that is called as the gynoecium. So, this is the innermost roll, students. Okay, innermost. Afterwards, when we come little bit outside, then we get the second roll, and this is the next structure called as stamen. Okay. Now, stamen consists of anther and again a long thread-like structure called as filament. This anther and filament together is called as stamen, and if many stamens are there, then that is called as the endoscium. Now, this is the male part of the flower and this is the female part of the flower. So, these are the innermost rolls of the flower that is found on the receptacle or thalamus. Now, afterwards we come to the next structure that is called as petals. Okay, I am drawing petals like this. Now, these are brightly colored structure to attract the insects for the pollination called as the petals, and the group of petals, let me draw it like this, and the group of petals are called as corolla. Then, at the base of the petals or at the base of the receptacle, we will see some structures like this, green colored structure, and it is called as sepal. And the group of sepal is called as the calyx. Now, see the function of all these things. Receptacle or thalamus is there to hold all the rolls of the flower. Then we come to the innermost roll, that is pistil, okay, or it is also called as the gynoecium. Now, this consists of stigma. Stigma may be lobed or flat shaped. It is there to contain the pollen grains. Then we come to the style. Through the style, the pollen grains will enter. Then we come to the ovary and ovule where the process of fertilization takes place. Afterwards, we come to the male part of the flower, that is anther and filament, called as the stamen, or group is called as the endoscium. Now what they will do? It will prepare the pollen grain for the process of fertilization, and filament, with the help of filament, the anther is attached to the surface of the receptacle. Okay. Then there are the petals called as the corolla, group of petals, help to attract the insect and help in the process of pollination. Now, sepal is there that store the parts of the flower at the time of bud formation. So, this is the function of the sepal. Now, as I told you that flower is a modified stem. Okay, flower is a modified stem. Suppose if I used to draw a stem like this, it is a stem. Clear? Now this we all have studied that stem consists of some of the meristematic tissues. If I remember in the previous classes, then it consists of, at the tip of the stem, it consists of the apical meristematic tissues. At the tip of the apical meristematic tissue, there is a formation of the pistil. Okay, and these meristematic tissues, these stem consist of the nodes and internodes, and at the different nodes we have the different part. Like this is the male part of the flower, then we draw the petals, after that you just draw the sepal. Now what happens? Let me draw this also. Now what happens? As it is a modified shoot, if it will compress, okay, if we will compress them, then what happen? We'll get a structure like this. Clear? Now this is again at the center, and all they will be compressed, and then they will originate from here. Understood? So this whole is compressed to form the flower, and that's why we call it as a modified stem. Now just after this we'll start with the structure of stamen. Now let us see the structure of stamen. Every stamen consists of two parts. We can write down. It consists of two parts. One is anther and then filament. Okay. Now suppose this is anther and this is filament. It is either connected with the receptacle, that is thalamus, or it can also be connected to the petals. The end through which it is connected to the thalamus or petal is called as proximal end. See this carefully, children. And the end to which it is attached to the anther, that is called as the dorsal end or dorsal side. Now see, the end which is near to the base of the flower, that is called proximal end, and the place which is away from the thalamus or the receptacle, that is called as the dorsal end, or best to write it as a distal end. Clear? So this is distal end and this is the proximal end. Now the anther is basically bilobed. Okay? Bilobed is also called as diathecus, or it can be one-lobed, and if it is one-lobed, then it is called as monothecus. Generally, all the flowers of the Malvaceae family, they are monothecous, and most of the flowers have the diathecus. Clear? Now, look at the meaning of theca. Theca is the lobe. If the lobe is one, it is called as the one-lobed or monothecus. And the common example is Malvaceae family. If the theca is 2, that is, if it is containing 2 lobed, then it is called as the diathecus. Now, the 2 thecus, suppose these are the 2 theca, the 2 thecus is joined with the help of a tissue called as a connective tissue, or it is also called as a sterile tissue. Now, suppose the 2 lobes are linked with this. This is called as connective tissue, or it is also called as sterile tissue. Clear? So, this is about the anther. Now, how this anther is connected to the filament, on this basis, we have generally 4 different types of attachment. Number 1, suppose if I used to draw, now this is the bilobed structure. If the filament is attached to the base of the anther, this place, then it is called as the basifixed. Clear? If the filament is attached at the dorsal side, then it is called as dorsifixed. If the filament is attached to the whole base, to the whole of the anther, then it is called as the adennate. And the 4 important part is, suppose the anthers are like this. Okay, the 2 parallel anthers are like this. And if the filament is attached here, clear? Then it is called as versatile. This is most common feature of anemophilous flower. That is a flower in which the pollination can be done with the help of air. Because now these anthers, they are dangling in the air. And as the pressure of the air will fall or come, then the pollen grains from here, they will scatter into the air and then they form the structure. Now children, this is the structure of stamen. Upper, as I told you, anther, and this is filament. If we cut the TS of the anther, okay, then we will see the structure something like this. Suppose if I am going to cut the TS, then the structure will be like this. Clear? Now, in between there will be the connective, and inside this will be the lobe number 1, and this will be your lobe 2. That's why it is diatheca. Clear? That is consisting of the 2 lobes. Now the 2 lobes, they have 4 chambers of the pollen sac. See, I am drawing it here like this. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we can say that each lobe consists of the 2 pollen sac. Now, pollen sac when they are young, then that is called as microsporangia. And when they become mature, then we can call them as pollen sac. So don't get confused between microsporangia and pollen sac. When the anther is in young condition, it is called as the microsporangia, and when the anther becomes mature, we can call it as a pollen sac. Now, after this, we will study about the internal structure of this anther.